Oh, yeah. Let's go. Hey, 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 yo. Come on. Hey, 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 yo. Oh, yeah. Hey, 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 yo. Let's go.
Welcome, everyone, to the Fantistics Inside of Baseball podcast. I'm Blasi, along with Schuyler Dombroske from Fantistics and InsideOfBaseball.com. It's Schuyler's and I first flight sort of together. This is very good.
Maybe.
Sort of. We'll see. We had an aborted takeoff on a previous that you guys may have seen.
If you did, sorry.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there was some good information, but we're going to go over it again anyway here because we had some technical issues last time. Hopefully, things will hold up on this end as we go through and here as we get ready for drafts. And today's topic is the Draft Advisory Program, and we have an ADP, which everybody's familiar with, and an FDP, which is the Fantistics Draft Position, which is just basically where the program thinks you should draft them based on the projections, not where you should draft them, but where they rank.
In a vacuum, if they were ranked just on our projections, that's where they would fall.
It's basically a ranking in ADP form as opposed to estimated auction value, which is also on the program, and VAM, which is a value against means, which is the value within the position and relative to other positions. So you can compare apples to dump trucks and decide whether you want to take the starting pitcher or the outfielder early in the draft. And this is just another way to exhibit rankings, but in a way you're familiar with ADP. And what we're going to be talking about as we get later in the program is players who our FDP is about 5 rounds or so, or multiple rounds better than what ADP has shown. So the computer program, the draft advisory software, tells us these players are probably worth a little bit higher than where they've been drafted. So we're going to examine that a little bit. Fair to say? We can talk about that more in detail when we get there.
Absolutely. Gaps are different at different positions. Obviously, I think we have almost 10 round gaps in a few places, and then maybe just 1.5 to 2 in others where everything's a lot tighter.
All right. So I like to look at league stats on a yearly basis just to see how the game has changed and how I can incorporate that into my strategy. You did that work this year, so I'm interested to see what you came up with.
Well, the biggest thing that I noticed, and it makes a lot of sense when you look at kind of the list of hitters, especially that we have on here that we project a lot drafted more highly than are actually the ADP is going right now. Last year was the lowest league batting average since 1968, which was such an inoffensive year that the league decided to lower the mound at the end of that season. So to give you an idea of where we are, that's where we are. Baseball 60 years ago thought that was so bad, the way the league performed this past year, that they had to do something drastic. So when you look at the hitters that we've got on here, there are a lot of guys that put up very good batting averages. And at this point in the iteration of baseball, very good batting averages, 280. 300, just that doesn't happen much anymore. So you got guys that are very good contact hitters that can give you a batting average 30 to 50 points above the league average. That is a substantial differential to give you a nice head start in that category in roto-style formats.
And I know what you and I both like about the Draft Advisory Program is it gives us a clinical view of what we're looking at. And then we adjust it at Fantistics, and there are adjustments every day on the projections and as news flow happens and things change. But it's always nice to get the clinical view, because in this instance, what we're talking about is you may look at a batting average now, today, and not have the context for it from what happened last year, but the Draft Advisory Program will put it in that context. And so a player's value, you may look at a batting average and say, that's not a very good batting average, but it might be better than average, and you might not realize it at this point. And the Draft Advisory Program factors that into its rankings and its valuation of the player.
You're 100% right. And I think when we get down this list, there'll be a couple names that you kind of look at funny, like, why do we have them ranked so highly? And then you see the batting averages, both historically and our projections. You say, oh, I see. League batting average was 243. If this guy's going to bat 285, that's huge.
And this is what we run into with pitchers sometimes, because when we talk about this, it's one of my favorite blog posts. And by the way, InsideOfBaseball.com, free to non-subscribers. Lots of blog posts here in the free preseason to help you with your draft, and samples of what we send out to our subscribers every day on there as well. But one of my favorite blog posts from Anthony every year is the predictability of stats. And what we learned over the last couple of years, we know instinctively wins aren't predictable, right? Because they're largely circumstantial. They're not based on a pitcher's skills. They're based on what happened in the game, what happened with the bullpen, a lot of things that are out of the pitcher's control. We depend on ERA a lot, and the fact of the matter is ERA on a year-to-year basis is less predictable than wins.
It definitely is. The things that are controllable for the pitchers, and this gets back kind of to how we value pitching now, which is different than when you and I started doing this together maybe 15 years ago, 10 years, a while anyway.
Yeah, a while.
We're looking at, can you strike guys out? Can you keep guys from getting free passes to first? And can you keep the ball in the ballpark? And that's why, just as an example, he's not on our list today, but a guy like Logan Webb for me is perpetually undervalued.
Yep.
Because the community at large looks at the lack of strikeout ability and says, well, he's not going to give you K, so he can't really be an ace. And I say, wait a minute. I mean, the league is batting 243. This guy will give up some singles, sure, maybe more than the average pitcher does, but he keeps the ball in the park. He doesn't walk guys. And by the nature of that, with that control that he shows, he gives you length, gives you a lot of innings. So the whip is pretty low. All these things combined, I think, make him an underrated starting pitcher. And I don't mind him as my SP1. I really don't.
So how many times, and this is an example we talk about every spring, is that you have to hold players up at different angles to get a true evaluation. How many times have you seen a pitcher where the ERA doesn't match his underlying statistics, the stuff that we depend on, quality of contact, controlling walks, keeping the ball in the ballpark, that type of thing, and the ERA doesn't match up, and we go into the game log and we see 2 7-run outings?
Yes, which bumps it up like a half a run. So, okay, I mean, that happened, and it did matter for your team stats.
But a lot of people are going to look at that ERA and see the half a run difference and weigh it too heavily, when maybe that was a Colorado starter. That was a day that he took on the Dodgers, and the Dodgers were particularly good that day, or the Yankees in Yankee Stadium, something like that.
Or the bullpen was gassed, and the manager's like, look, you got to give us 4 today. I don't care if you give up 9 runs.
Yeah, or the bullpen gave up 2 of the runs that he gave up in the game.
Precisely. Yeah.
I mean, 6, and the bullpen gave up 2 of them.
There are a couple guys that I was looking at the other day, and the names are escaping me because it's not right in front of me. I didn't write it down, but 62% strand rates. Like, what are the odds of that happening again this year? Pretty much none.
Yep. And you brought up another point, which is about global numbers and looking at the league numbers. Stolen bases are so important. That's where walks come, where we're looking at pitchers and we're so adamant about them cutting their walks. And I think if you look at starting pitching in the league in general, and you look at the guys who have risen in the starting pitching ranks, they are guys who have started to control their walks. I think that is the major emphasis in Major League Baseball right now. Pitchers not to walk guys.
Definitely. And I'm really kind of excited. We didn't talk about this at all yet. What do you think of the challenge system that we're seeing this spring? Personally, I love it, but I hear what you think.
I think if they limit it to the point, because obviously we don't want games dragging out and things like that, but I kind of like it. I kind of like
5 seconds. I mean, it's not like, an NBA review where it goes on for like 4 minutes or something. It's 5 seconds.
A commercial break and you come back and you get the guy at the mic.
Exactly. Yeah. This is just boom. Okay, it's done.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know. They're not implementing it this year, right?
No, I think this is just spring this year. It's a trial run. They've had it in the minors. You get 2 challenges. I kind of like the system. I've enjoyed it, and I watched more spring training baseball than I normally do so far this year because we've had 110 inches of snow this year. I'm looking for any hint of spring anywhere.
Yeah,
but it does not disrupt the flow of the game for me. I've watched it. It doesn't bug me one bit.
No, they do it very well, and I was just laughing because I love Terry Francona. I love him to death. I think he's a great guy and a great manager, but just decide we're not doing that.
Yeah. I mean,
we're not playing that game.
Terry.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you really want the Eric Gregg strike zone from the '97 World Series? I mean, that could happen, and you'll be challenging all day long.
Which brings us down to, I'm an older guy, and it's like I have loved all the changes baseball has made. I would have gone with more of them. I love the ghost runner. I love everything that's done, the pitch clock, things like that. I think it's made the game much more enjoyable to watch. And I think everything's been done really well. I think that's a rule that could be done really well and has been instituted pretty well to this point. And again, if they don't overdo it, I think it could be really good. It's going to be really interesting. You get an 8th or 9th inning instance where someone challenges a pitch. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a little bit of extra suspense for a few seconds. I did not expect us to be different on the curmudgeon scale, though. Like, I am much more of a curmudgeon. I think the pitch clock I expected to hate, and I'm okay with it.
Yep.
The ghost runner, I think, is the most preposterous nonsense ever to exist, and I wish it would go away.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you and I are Red Sox Yankees guys, so we're used to 4.5-hour games, but I don't think people want to see that. Right?
Who cares, man? I'm here to watch the game, okay? I'm not here to watch some bastardized version of it.
And I think they fell short not going to the 7-inning doubleheaders. I kind of like those too, but that was only yet.
That feels so minor league. All that stuff feels minor league to me. It's like, hey, this is
one, and you know, I've been calling for the death of the shift for years, so I was happy that they.
I knew you'd like that, and I'm okay with
a little bit.
I'm okay with that one too.
The only one that I have some trouble with, because I think it bastardizes the game to a large degree, and I think you and I talked about it the year the rules were instituted, is that they throw over the limited pickoff attempts and the bases to an extent, larger bases, they're cutting it down. It's fractional margins, but it changed the game dramatically because stolen bases have become so much more prominent.
It did. It kind of, I think, if I recall the numbers, it added about a half to 2/3 of a stolen base per game. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, clearly it really hamstrings both the pitcher and the catcher. It makes it very easy to steal bases. Success rates have gone up. Attempts have gone up. It has changed the game for sure. However, we got stolen bases the most last year. It was up another 0.03 stolen bases per team per game, and most since 1992. So, if the goal was to get baseball back to sort of slightly pre-Bash Brothers, a little more speed, a little more defense. Yeah. A little away from that, then it's accomplishing it. I just don't necessarily love the way that it's doing it.
Yeah, and I think the combination of the shift is good for helping that as well, too. But here's the thing. The practical application of that for us in fantasy baseball, especially here in draft season, is that emphasis on limiting walks for pitchers. We talk about the 3 pillars, and Anthony drilled it down last year. You and I have been talking about it for years, about, don't walk guys, keep the ball in the ballpark, and strike out guys when you need to. And his correlation for that, as he went through it and worked it down, he went to ground ball rate as opposed to keeping the ball in the ballpark, which is fine. No problem with that. But the closest correlation of success for him was limiting walks, because in instances, again, about a 70% strand rate for the league on average, and I might be working with old numbers, but, work with me. Around 3 out of every 10.
You're right.
Around 3 of every 10 runners you put on score. So why walk a guy? If you walk 3 in a game, you're going to give up a run, right? Yeah. It's about the way it works. But it gets even worse, I think, with the stolen base situation, because when you're walking a guy, you're putting him in scoring position, and you're putting all kinds of pressure on your defense, and you're loading up, especially a leadoff walk nowadays.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just like giving up a double.
Yep. And it just applies pressure on the defense the whole game. It limits you what you can do pitching wise. It limits what you can do defensively. It's just something you got to pay attention to. It changes the outcome of the game dramatically. And again, the better pitchers, the guys who have made improvements because they've cut their walk rate. And I think that's the evidence that in organizations with pitching coaches dealing with pitchers, the emphasis now is just don't walk guys.
Without question. Just think about the simple math that you just went through. The difference between a guy walking 2.5 per 9 and 3.5 per 9 is probably a third of a run in ERA.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal.
Yep.
So what if the guy gives up, an extra single here and there? It's not going to be as easy to forecast, and it's much more luck based and defense based than anything else. And
it's kind of overtaken. It's Trump strikeouts. Strikeouts are kind of old school. I mean, strikeouts are still going to be there. Velo is still going to be there, but we need control. That's why a guy like Dylan Cease, I'm always skeptical about. He's always drafted higher than I like to draft him, because I just can't deal with the walks. I love the strikeouts. I just can't deal with the walks.
I am 100% on board with you. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that I would prefer Logan Webb as my SP1 than Dylan Cease. And across the industry, Cease is 6, 7, something like that among starting pitchers. And if he's my number 2, great. But if he's my 1, I'm nervous.
Because those extra base runners on top of that, as much as we've tried to eliminate the 3 true outcomes, they are still there to a large extent. The home run is still a big part of the game.
Yep, absolutely.
And walks turn solo homers into 2-run homers and 3-run homers, and that's a problem. And that contributes to that ERA mess as well, because that leads to the 6-run outings, the 7-run outings.
Yeah, it's pretty rare that you're going to get 6-run outings, 6-run innings on a bunch of singles.
Yep. Nope, not going to happen. But today we're talking about the draft advisory program. We're looking at FDP, Fantistics Draft Position, as opposed to ADP, and we're looking at some guys who rank much higher in FDP than they do in ADP. What's your take on this FDP? And the thing I always try to caution people on when subscribers talk to me and things like that is the FDP is a suggestion. They don't tell you to draft him there. That's not where you draft him. It just gives you an idea of his relative value as opposed to where he's being drafted, so you can play the waiting game to an extent and know the extent to which you can play the waiting game.
Right. You're going to run into other people that love players too. And I think that this just gives you an idea of who you might be able to wait a little bit on. And then you can jump elsewhere. You can reprioritize and say, I can wait one swing around in the snake and probably still get this guy because there's a four round gap between his FDP and ADP. You're not going to want to go all the way to the FDP because odds are 50% of the time he's going to be gone. Yep. But if you want the player, you could wait 2 rounds.
And that's part of the draft advisory program. If you're unfamiliar with it, and what I love about one of the things I love most about the draft advisory program is it becomes very dynamic and changes with every player off the board as the economy changes in terms of certainly with auction values, with the economy on dollars spent and dollars left to spend. But statistically, there's a market as well. How many home runs are left? How many stolen bases are left? Things like that. And it just gives you a great valuation of that. And the Fantistics draft position gives you an idea of where the player should be valued based on our projection of the player. And again, like you said, you can look at that and say, wow, this guy's a really good value, but the way ADP is, and by the way, in a draft advisory program, you can pick the ADP for your site or a combined ADP. So if you're doing NFBC, you can get the NFBC ADP, you can get the CBS ADP, because that's important because, Schuyler, when we're in the room, and I'm in the room with my house league now in the draft room on CBS, there's a ranking of the players, and that highly influences the way the draft goes. So
because people are lazy. Yeah. They don't want to scroll down. It's right. Whatever's right there, I'll pick somebody there.
I know. Yeah. So you can prey on that, and that's a little gap in the economy. There's some room for there's some planning purposes room there in that difference between the FDP and the ADP.
I can't imagine drafting without this. I really can't. I went so far as the laptop trouble that I've been having with my main laptop, which is what I bring with me to drafts and things. My desktop obviously stays.
Yep.
I bought a beater laptop so that I can have it for Tout Wars this weekend because I can't even imagine doing that auction without it.
Oh, you don't. I don't know how many auctions you do. I don't do a ton of auctions. And my first auction, you're gonna laugh. My first auction ever was the Tout Wars.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
it's different. It appeals to me obviously because of my profession, and I think that it gives me just that little tiny infinitesimal leg up in that kind of format because I'm pretty good at assessing the room and assessing valuations and what people are doing and things like that. I love it. I do 3 auctions a year, and I really enjoy it.
An auction without the software, without the draft.
I don't know how you could do it. I mean, certainly everybody else does it, but I don't know how you could do it. It's so much easier.
I know. And the other thing, if you are playing in a Yahoo League, you need the software because it can tie into the Yahoo draft room and populate the rosters. You don't have to do it manually. And sometimes I just go in and do a random Yahoo League just for the hell of it, just to watch the program work. So it's great.
It's that would make it. I don't play any Yahoo Leagues right now. That would make it so much easier. You'd be crazy not to have it if you're playing in Yahoo formats. It can be tough. It can be challenging. You need to kind of practice it a few times before your draft or auction to get used to how quickly you have to move to keep rosters updated. I did one NFBC quick draft last year.
Yeah.
And I actually enlisted my wife. I told her I would take her out to dinner at a nice place the next night so that she could put the values in on a second laptop while I was keeping up with everything on the first one. It can be a lot. In a quick
I'm going to laugh because I used to do it with my son and some of the host leagues on Sirius and things like that. You just update the software for me.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot when the room is moving quick. It's a lot.
Yeah, when you're with the pros, when you're with the industry people, the draft can go pretty quickly. So it can be a lot. But the draft advisory program is great. If you're unfamiliar with it, go to insiderbaseball.com and check it out. There's plenty of articles on it. I believe there's a free demo that you can download, which is fully functional, just with a limited amount of our first projections for the year. We update the projections on at least a daily basis, sometimes a couple of times daily. Garrett Cole goes down with an injury. Sorry, Sky, but it's tough for me too because he was my number one. But that's a whole nother story.
Well, we talked about it the other day. I was pretty sure this was going to be the eventuality.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, like you said, he got one opinion and didn't like it. That usually means TJ.
Exactly. You know what it said if he doesn't like it.
But by that afternoon, you're going to get an update with the player rankings, and that as the market shifts because Garrett Cole is out for the year, or any other injury, or any other news in spring training, somebody wins a job, somebody is going to project it to hit leadoff in the batting order as opposed to 7th or 8th, that's going to change the value of the player. And that's one of the things about the draft advisory program. When you're drafting, you hit the update button, you're getting the most up-to-date information that you can.
Yep. And it's almost every day.
All right, let's dig into some players. And these are players whose FDP, the Fantistics draft position on the draft advisory software, is going several rounds higher than the ADP. And again, what I like about the draft advisory program, and you and I put some influence into this, Anthony put some influence into this as news flow happens and things go along, but it's a nice clinical view. And it really, we have impressions, we have opinions, we have ways of valuing players, but it's nice to have that clinical backup, that reason backup that doesn't have that emotional bias behind it to verify or debunk what we think about a given player.
Oh yeah, because we all have our biases and they just get more and more entrenched the longer you go through this. So I do think that it's excellent to have that antiseptic view of, okay, well, this is what the numbers say. And, if it supports what you think, then good. If not, then, reassess what you're doing.
Do you have any of those players? Like Jesus Luzardo is a never again for me. And I'm just looking at it. I'm not drafting Jesus Luzardo.
The more I have played DFS, which I've actually cut back quite a bit over the last 12 months or so, but the more I've played DFS, the more I've gotten rid of that bias, because when you're playing every day, if you have that bias, you're hurting yourself.
I know.
Jalen Duren, the Pistons center, is that guy for me. Every time I play him, he scores like 2 points.
Yeah, but it lingers. You reason it out, but emotionally, you see the name and you're going, I don't want to deal with him.
Well, I have my biases of a different sort. Like Chris Bassett for me is a no-go ever. I find him to be the most vanilla of vanillas. And there is, what's the upside?
Yeah,
I mean, he's not really good at anything. He's not really terrible at anything, but I just don't want that at all.
Just get an ick every time you think of him.
Exactly. I see Chris Bassett and I think, oh no, I don't even like Bassett Hounds. Come on.
All right, let's start with Vinny Paquantino. Let's start with a Paisan. And first base is a really interesting position this year.
It is. And speaking of animals, the Pasquatch, have you seen his Twitter logo? Because it's actually half him and half Sasquatch.
Oh, nice.
He's fully embracing it. It's great. And I really feel like I was like the first person in on that, so it should be credited to me. Anyway,
you got it.
First base is definitely a unique position this year because one first baseman that is being drafted in the first 25 rounds has more than 9 stolen bases projected.
Yep.
So you can just sort of ignore that category at that position, in my estimation. And that's good for people who like Vinny Paquantino because he is slow. He's only 27 and he's already slow, which fine, because he has a very, very interesting mix of contact and power ability. Only 2 first basemen that are in the top, I think, 30 have better contact rates than Paquantino, Luis Arias and Yandy Diaz. And we both know how much power they're likely to supply, despite the size of Yandy Diaz's biceps. He just beats the ball into the ground every second. Yep. Vinny Paquantino does not do that. He's a very good line drive hitter, probably more of a gap guy, although you're seeing some more pull over the last few years. Average exit velocity, 91. Max is over 112. So the power fully fits into the good to very good category. It's not elite, but it's very good. Contact ability is borderline elite. I think, as an age 27 guy coming in this year, he hasn't really played a full season yet. Had the hand injury at the end of last year, kind of August timeframe. He was on his way to probably 25 home run season. I can see him in the 25 to 30 homer with a very, very plus average, plus runs and RBIs kind of a situation. He's a 4-category guy and a lot of upside because he hasn't put that full season up. So people don't view him as the level that I think he's performed at.
Okay, hopefully this is the first time viewing for a lot of people. Let's talk about that a little bit. We talked with pitchers and how we tend to concentrate on being able to strike out guys, keep the ball in the ballpark, don't walk anybody. Quality of contact is a huge thing when we start to evaluate hitters. And the game here at Fantistics is taking a look at the results stats, which is what people generally score on at the back of the baseball card: batting average, home runs, RBIs, runs, stolen bases. We take a look at the results stats, and then we look at indicator stats, and we try to see if the two tell us a different story. And if they do, we try to reason out why. Now, you talked about the two areas of hitters that we tend to look at. We tend to look at plate control and plate approach, which is their discipline, how often they chase, how well they make contact, and then the quality of contact when they do hit the ball. Paquantino's contact rate is off the charts at 87.5 last year. He just gets the bat to the ball, and he's pretty good he's pretty good when he does get the bat to the ball, because his quality of contacts in terms of exit velocity, hard hit contact, things like that are excellent.
Definitely. And the only guy that really fits that same profile in terms of ability to make contact and ability to do damage with contact is Yandy Diaz. And Vinny Paquantino has probably 2.5 times the launch angle of Yandy Diaz. So, Diaz had that one year where we all thought, oh, here we go. He finally figured it out, but he unfigured it out pretty quickly. Paquantino, I really feel like he could be a 300/30 guy. And there are very, very few players in baseball you could say that about anymore.
Let's just do the basics again, because hopefully people are watching us for the first time. Hard hit, we love quality contact, and we love plate rates and things like that. And you look at contact rate, which I look at because of you.
Well, thank you.
But I tend to swing strike rate and chase rate just to make sure that they can identify a strike and they can make contact with the strike when they get one. And that's interesting about Vinny, because he's got the 5.9% swinging strike. He just does not miss the ball a lot, but he does chase a little bit at 33. Almost like to see him zone up, but things are going so well. It's like, I don't even care about that 33% rate, because he's a quality hitter.
He is. I would love to see him be a bit more discerning, because you're just going to continue to augment the quality of contact if you just avoid swinging at pitches that are, Vlad Guerrero notwithstanding.
Yeah,
guys don't hit very well on balls that are 6 inches out of the zone. So I think that there is some room for improvement here. There's also room for better luck, and there's room for better injury luck. So all these things considered, I love the guy. I'm targeting him everywhere.
Hard hit percentage is the percentage of times when you make contact that your exit velocity is over 95 miles an hour. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm distracted by the dog.
The Aussie?
No, the little one. She's decided she needs to look outside.
Exit velocity is average exit velocity. And I should put maximum exit velocity on my dashboard, because that's another one that you taught me, and I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. But you look at average exit velocity and max exit velocity, because max exit velocity is often a better determiner, especially with young players, a better determiner of what their raw power is, correct?
Yeah, exactly. If you want to equate it to sort of the scouting terms and scouting scales that we use, average exit velocity is game power, and max exit velocity is raw power. So particularly for younger players, I like to look at the max exit velocity and see, can this guy offer better than average raw? And when you see, Vinny up there over 112, average max exit velocity is in the 110.5 range across Major League Baseball. So he's 1 mile an hour, probably a reasonable 1 to 1.5 miles an hour standard deviation. So I think that he's probably at least one standard deviation above the norm in terms of raw, maybe even a smidge more than that. So for me, on a percentile basis, probably 75th, 80th percentile raw power, which is great. And he can get to it, because the average exit velocity is 91, makes a ton of contact. Chase rate's average. It's not horrible. He's just a professional hitter in my estimation. I love him. I think he's a great player. Seems like a great dude, too.
Launch angle, doing the little primer here, continue to primer, and we'll put it away for the rest of the players. But launch angle is the angle that the ball comes off the bat on contact. Positive is up and negative is down. And that's something we pay attention to. And the poster child for this is Christian Yelich. Early in his career, we used to talk about Christian Yelich, and he had great power, good quality of contact, but his launch angle was really low. He just wasn't lifting the ball. And as we look at the development curve for power, especially in young players, that's what we're looking at, launch angle. Vinny's is great. It's not too high. It's not too low. It can be too high, which means he's popping up the ball a little bit more, losing some of his power in the height of the fly balls a little bit more. His launch angle is excellent, and that leads us into barrel rate, which is intensely complex. You can go look it up if you want to. But basically what it involves is hit the ball hard and hit it at a good launch angle at a productive launch angle. So that's what a barrel is. When you hit the ball,
harder you hit it, the less narrow the range is that you can go with the launch angle.
Yeah, it's a moving target. But basically what it is, if you hit the ball with the ideal exit velocity and the ideal launch angle, then you're very productive. And that's what barrel rate is. Yes. And so in Vinny's launch angle, hard hit rate is 45.8%, which is excellent. Exit velocity 91, which is excellent as well. The barrel rate's a little bit low. Launch angle is pretty good, though. I'm wondering if that barrel rate could come up a little bit.
Yeah, I think that it can. He again hasn't really had a full season. 60 games in 23, 130 games last year. He was on his way there, but there's another step here. He's
Yeah,
what, 1,100 plate appearances, so we're right about where hitters make that last leap, as you've alluded to so many times over the years.
Yeah, there's like you get around 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 plate appearances, and the other aspect of that is not just the plate appearances, but full playing time. And the second year of full playing time, if you land around 1,100 at bats, that's the breakout model. That's when hitters become more comfortable, they become more convinced with themselves, and they start to bloom a little bit there. And Vinny's right there. He had the full year. He had 496 at bats this year. That's full time play. He'll have full time play again this year, and he hit about 1,200 bats. This is the summer. This is another level. He finds a gear this summer, I think.
It's the summer of the Pasquatch. I'm calling it now. And he's a 10th round pick via ADP right now. We've got him in the middle of the 6th round. If you want him, I would start targeting him around round 7, round 8, somewhere in that ballpark. Love him. If you get past Vlad and Freddie Freeman and Bryce Harper, I'm on board.
All right, so my first reaction to that is that's kind of the economy, because there's a certain point after a few first basemen come off the board, people tend to wait on first base.
Yes.
Because I can just get a guy down there, and that's kind of true. But the draft program and the FDP kind of account for that and tell you Vinny might be a guy who's above the weight a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's the cream of that next crop there. He is. If I have one league that I got Bryce Harper in, any other draft that I've been doing, I'm targeting Vinny.
Yeah, I targeted Vinny, and I'm going to use this show for my own purposes, as I often do, because I like talking to Schuyler and getting his opinion and his advice. I waited for Vinny, but got sniped on Vinny, so I ended up with Toglia, who's the other guy behind him that I kind of liked.
I just really struggle with his contact rate. Coors Field papers over a lot of sins.
Yeah.
He swings and misses a boatload, and I just don't know that that's going to improve enough. For every Aaron Judge that can manage with a 13, 14, 15% swinging strike rate, there are 9 guys that just fall out of baseball in a couple of years because they just don't make enough contact.
But first base for me, and you talked about it a little bit, there's no stolen bases at first base, right? There's some batting average, but I don't even play for batting average. We've had that discussion before. If the draft advisory program tells me I'm a little low, I'll start looking for a guy, and we play OBP more than batting average, but I'll start playing about it a little bit. All I want out of first base is home runs.
Right. Home runs and RBIs, yeah.
Home runs and RBIs, that's all I'm looking for.
That's the other thing about Paquantino last year is he had sort of an abnormal amount of RBIs, 97 RBIs in 130 games.
That's going to be hard to repeat. But
it's not going to be repeated, I don't think. But if he plays an extra 20 games, he could still get to 90 to 100 RBIs, I think. That Royals lineup is, the top of it is decent. There's some issues with the bottom of the order. I think on the whole, probably a league average offense roughly. So, it's not a detriment to him really.
So he's a high second-tier first baseman, and the draft advisory program says, don't wait maybe as long as you think you should wait.
I would agree with that 100%. Of that next group of 5 or 6 guys, he's the one I want.
All right, you say it's the year of Pasquatch. No one thinks it's the year of Xander Bogaerts, but he seems to be undervalued in most leagues.
This was the first guy, when I'm going through the list, I said, all right, what is going on here? Why does the system love him? And Xander Bogaerts is an excellent contact hitter. Very good line drive hitter. Most of his career last year, that was not the case. And you can look at what happened last year, which really was a rough year for him.
Yeah.
And the average exit velocity has dropped down below average, but the max exit velocity is still above average. So I think assuming average power, 15 to 20 home runs, probably reasonable for a guy like Bogaerts. The thing that I like best about Xander last year is after he came back from the shoulder injury, he put up a 292, 333, 429 line in 62 games in the second half, 7 homers, 9 steals. So you're basically looking at a guy, a 15, 20 guy with a very good average.
Mm-hmm.
And he is just not being favored at all by ADP. Late 12th round on average. And this is a guy that certainly is very likely to give you a helping average, very likely to at least keep pace, but probably help in steals.
Yep.
He has kind of average power. He's probably going to hit towards the top of the lineup.
Yeah. Did you say 20 in steals? I'll question 20.
He stole 9 bases in 60 games in the second half last year after he came back and felt good.
He's capable. Yeah.
I mean, 15 to 20 and 15 to 20 for homers and steals.
Be his first 20 stolen base season, though.
I'm just telling you how much he ran last year.
Yep. Gotcha.
Yeah, I really feel
by
like
the way, in San Diego, with the changes that have gone on there, and just the fact he's in San Diego and what we've seen the last couple of years, he may be evolving in terms of his playing role, which may include running a little bit more.
I was just going to say that because that offense looks to me quite a bit weaker this year. And I really think that they're probably going to run more because of that. And I think he's going to have to take on a bigger role in the offense. So I bet he will bat somewhere between second and fifth. And I think he'll have a nice little bounce back season. He's only 32. He's just at the tail end of his prime right now. Going back to shortstop this year too. So should maintain that dual eligibility, which is nice. I think he's a very nice target, kind of around round 10, round 11. If you can squeeze him in there, he's a guy that's not going to hurt you in any category. And he certainly will help you in a few.
All right. Now I get excited when you tell me you love a player, and Luis Garcia Jr. You get really enthusiastic when we were just going over the list before the show.
Well, I have him in like every single format. And one of the things that I think is underrated, I mean, people sort of cognitively understand it without it being front of brain kind of stuff. This kid has 5 professional seasons under his belt. Mm-hmm. He bounced around for the first 2, but he's become a solid regular for 2 years. So normally that type of a player is age 28 or so, 27 maybe.
Right.
Garcia's 24. Okay. This kid was a regular at 19, 20 during the COVID year and has maintained basically regular status the entire time. Wasn't developing quite to the point that people expected of his raw abilities. Last year, 89% or 89 miles an hour average exit velocity, 110.7 max. That's solid average for power. So he's come all the way up. That's his 4th straight exit velocity increase. He's also the contact rate is
jump. His entire quality of contact took a significant jump last year.
It did. Last year was a big step forward at age 23 too. So still on that steep part of the aging curve. Speed is definitely average plus. The contact rate's above average. Ground ball rate is trending steadily down, which when you start out at 50%, like that's what you want to see. You want the ground ball rate to be under 40%. You want line drives and fly balls, of course. The thing that he really could make one more leap on is his pitch recognition. He is, to put it lightly, a free swinger. But the contact ability is so good that he's another one of these guys that can sort of get away with it. But I think that it would be helpful for him to be a little more discerning.
But he takes a reasonable amount of walks and doesn't strike out a ton. He's got swing and miss, but he manages to keep the at-bat in line, that he's putting the ball in play enough.
He does, and that lineup is getting better and better.
Yep.
You know, you're starting to incorporate some of these prospects that are coming through the pipeline. Dylan Cruz should be a full-timer this year. Really like that dude, too. James Wood looks fantastic. You've got C.J. Abrams, obviously still a very good player. So you've got a nice little top half of the order going, and I think that Garcia fits right in there. He is all 4 of those guys. Steep part of the aging curve, the improvement curve. The Nationals could surprise a little bit this year. That back half of the lineup in the rotation, still weak, and they're in a very tough division, but there is some burgeoning star power there.
The quality of contact took a big leap, including launch angle. His launch angles in his career so far, and some of these are smaller samples, but minus 3.6, 4.1, 5.5, 4.6, 8.2 last year. It's more what you want to see.
Still not what you want, but it's better.
It's better, and he's young. All right.
Yeah, I mean, 10 to 14, 10 to 15, that's kind of the sweet spot. So he has another step forward to make, but when we talk about hitter progression, normally you get one more bump in some type of skill, typically power, around age 25, 26. And Garcia, despite all of the at-bats that he has accumulated at the major league level, is still not there. He's still not to that point where we would consider him to be a fully formed athlete. So I love guys like this that have the experience and are still on the plus side age-wise.
All right, so 8.2 on the launch angle, not quite there. Pull percentage 30.4%, not what you want to see from a power guy. Fly ball rate 32.5%, a little bit less than you want to see from a power guy. Still hit 18 home runs.
Oh yeah, and there is a lot here. I mean,
yeah, and those are areas Those are low-hanging fruit in terms of areas of potential growth.
Yeah, if you told me Garcia hit 25-25 when we talk October 1st, I would say, okay, I could see it.
But he's not going at that price.
Oh, goodness, no. Not, end of the 9th round, and we've got him projected early to mid-6th round. So if you want him, round 7, round 8, another guy. I love the Paquantino Garcia back-to-back at the 7-8 turn if you're picking towards the end.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
All right, so in my house league, we're into the supplemental rounds, the reserve rounds now. Anthony Volpe's still sitting around.
What?
Yep.
Why?
Yeah.
So here's another guy.
It's a position dynamic.
Well, yeah, shortstop is certainly the strongest of the infield positions, probably stronger than outfield. So probably the strongest position on the board. I can see guys slipping if you just aren't targeting that yet. But here we are again. Another guy, 2 full seasons. Usually that kind of a player is 25, 26.
Yep.
23. And I don't care what people say about losing Juan Soto on this topic. The Yankee offense is still plus. Okay.
Yep.
Maybe top 10, probably around 10th. Still a plus offense. Volpe, with Soto gone, everybody is going to have to step up a little bit. Obviously, you're bringing in Goldschmidt. Should be a big upgrade over Rizzo. Don't know what they're going to do with third base. I suspect there'll be an acquisition unless one of the Oswald parentheses O's does something sort of surprising. Should see some growth out of Austin Wells. Jason Dominguez, very exciting player. That offense is still going to be quite good. And Anthony Volpe, contact rate was up 6 last year. And I think you talk about this a lot, and I agree with you, that hitters make adjustments not across the board, all in a uniform, smooth way. A lot of times a young player doesn't want to strike out all the time. First improvement comes with improving the contact rate, cutting down on the Ks. Next improvement comes with leveraging the power that is there. And the one thing that you notice about Anthony Volpe, who has fantastic speed, that is a big plus. The one thing you notice about Anthony Volpe in the minors versus Anthony Volpe in the majors is a 20% drop in fly ball rate. Mm-hmm. Really focusing on putting the ball in play and using his wheels, which, okay, I get it.
That's
especially batting where he did in the order.
He doesn't have to be a producer in that lineup. He has to be that guy that he's being.
He didn't have to be.
Yeah.
He may have to be, or at least will have to be a little more now. And I think that you will start to see here in year 3, I think you'll start to see some more launch angle. Maybe the contact rate regresses a little bit, but he was 79 last year. That is fine. 75 is fine. Yep. So he can give up a little of those gains this year in an attempt to search for a little more power that is there because he hit home runs in the minors frequently. So I think, 2020 this year from Volpe, sure. I mean, why would you not expect that? More than that, 2030? Sure. I mean, I wish I could bet on these things. I don't, but
I think you can.
I if I could find the right place, but he was 12-28 last year. I really think 2030 is on the table this year for him.
I've been beating this drum for a couple of years now, is that I think the development curve on players has hastened quickly. It has sped up, especially with young pitchers. I enjoy and buy into young pitchers much more quickly than I used to. College development is really good. The camp development and the third-party business development is really good. Driveline being the headliner among them. One of the things that still holds true in the jump from minor leagues to major leagues is the delayed power curve. And I think that's exactly what you're describing with Anthony Volpe, is that he comes into the league not wanting to strike out, wanting to put the ball in play. And again, in that lineup previously, that was kind of his role. That was Christian Yelich, again, the poster child for it. That's what he was in Miami with Giancarlo Stanton in Miami. He wasn't a middle of the order power guy. He was a put the ball in play and get on base guy.
Get on base for Big G. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So Volpe, I think he's at that model that we talked about. He's at 1,200 at bats, 2 years of full playing time. His role change is going to come up this year. He's going to be expected to put a little bit more power in, and there's room for growth in pull percentage. There's room for growth in fly ball rate. All he has to do, and he's a quality enough hitter so that if he accepts the role, I think he can produce.
He has shown these abilities in the minors and in the higher minors. So it's not something that, you're asking for a guy to do something that he probably can't do.
Yeah.
My main question here is, and I actually don't know this yet. I wonder if what Aaron Boone is doing here in the preseason is what he wants to roll into the regular season with, which is leading Austin Wells off. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah. Explain that to me.
There are a lot of leadoff candidates on the Yankees. I don't think he wants to put that pressure on the youngster Dominguez yet. And I think for other reasons, he doesn't really want to do that to Volpe because he did that to him in his rookie year, and that really shook his confidence.
Especially if he wants more pop out of Volpe, because out of the leadoff position, your job is going to be to get on.
Right. And he's had Volpe batting 7th, which, okay, that's at the tail end of all the good hitters. So yeah, that could work. But the whole Wells leading off thing, I just don't quite understand. The Yankees roster is not great right now. Yeah. They are missing a guy or two. One hitter, one pitcher, I think.
Who's he been batting second behind Wells?
It's been moving around. He's had I think he's had Judge there and Goldschmidt third.
Yeah, because again, and this is something that I railed on for years before. The traditional lineup is kind of dead. The lead off, the second hitter, and the third hitter. Your best hitter hits second, basically. Get him
that way. Ryan Spader he beats the drum every day on Bryce Harper should lead off, which, okay, sure.
I'm okay with that second because why would you not want to give Bryce Harper 50 more at bats a year?
Because that's what it equates to. It's 30 to 50 at bats. You're right.
By the way, you still get the order. You can still put your leadoff hitter at the bottom, your on base guys in front of them for the second and third and fourth time through the order. Why not?
Exactly. The only time he comes up guaranteed with nobody on is the first time. After that, it's circular. So it's such a archaic way of looking at things.
Yeah, and I don't mind the second. My thing was put your 3 and 4 up there and get those extra at bats during the course of the year because it's going to pay off for you. I don't mind second. Bryce Harper hitting second with a guy who might get on base before him. I don't mind that either, and eliminate that one time because he's only got 4 trips to the plate. Try to get a runner on base for him. By the way, if you get a runner on base for him, first of all, especially a guy who can steal a base, that occupies the defense, it occupies the pitcher, gets him into the set position, limits what the pitcher can do. He can't walk another guy if there's a guy on base.
Or he might nibble. He might nibble, and then all of a sudden you got 2 guys on and nobody out.
Right.
So yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense, and especially when you're talking about the difference between batting a guy first or fourth, second or fourth. You're talking 50 to 75 at bats over the course of the season. That's a ton.
Yep. I mean, that's old school. You're still going to get your order, but you're just going to, why not have your best hitters hit more? That's what you want, right?
We learn things over time. We learn. Sometimes it takes us a long time. Sometimes epiphanies happen. But these guys that just rail against stuff like the openers and things like that, these are happening for reasons. And the reasons are because teams perform better this way than they did the other way.
I don't love the opener from a baseball fan standpoint, but it works. I understand the logic behind it. And listen, the big thing in the game, you and I talked about this for years. Oh, the pup's here. I finally get to see the pup. Excellent.
Say hi, Bailey.
Hi, Bailey.
Maddie's chilling out. It's his 10th birthday today.
Oh, that's nice. My guy had just had his 8th a couple days ago.
Oh.
The other thing I've been railing about here, if I can remember what it was I've been railing about, is that, geez, I've lost my
Not the opener?
Huh?
Not the opener?
Oh, yes, about the opener. The major thing in baseball right now, stolen bases is kind of taking the shine of it. But the major thing in baseball right now, and it's all about this problems with starting pitchers only going 6 innings of 5 2/3 or 5 1/3. It's not about 5 2/3 as much as opposed to 6 1/3 or 7 1/3. And you want to save your bullpen. It's about the third time through the order, right? And I remember the whole Blake Snell controversy a few years ago in the World Series. And it's like, well, I get it, and I might not have pulled him either, but look at the numbers. The numbers for Blake Snell, the numbers for the league third time through the order. It makes a certain sense, and I know non-analytics people hate it. But why not push that envelope too? You're getting Bryce Harper up for the third time in the order in the 5th inning. Maybe get that starter out of there.
I agree with you 100%. And there are times when I want to see the pitcher stay in. But most of the time, if major league hitters are really, really talented, and if they see you for a third time in a game, especially if they've seen 6 or 7 pitches each time, you don't have anything new to throw at them. They have seen what you have.
Oh, and by the way, they've seen you. They're on their
doing the video,
the notebooks. They're looking at everything, right? Yeah. They got center field. I don't know what they can see down there or not, whether they can see center field camera or not. But and people, you see it all the time, especially in the first couple innings. Guys walking back from the plate and telling people he's throwing this, he's throwing that. Look,
yeah. And that's, because the replacement level has increased so much over the years. That's why pitchers can't go past 6 innings anymore. These guys are good. They know what you have.
I mean, I know it's physical to a degree, and I know they're saving pitchers, and I understand that, and that's certainly a factor. But I think a bigger factor that's overlooked is that they just don't want you to see. They don't want a hitter to see you the third time, especially the better hitters in the order.
I mean, performance goes up like 30-40%. So
you put that opener in, right? Looking at the top of the order right now, especially the way lineups are constructed right now, with the best hitters being 2 and 3 as opposed to 3 and 4, you get one of your best relievers in there. Maybe an opposite side, certainly a different pitch mix. That takes one time through the order, and it allows your starter to go deep in the game, which helps you save the rest of your bullpen.
Then you can run your starter for innings 2 through into the 7th, and then you just need 2 more relievers, and boom, you've got a game.
Yes.
Yeah,
so for me, it's like I don't understand why the opener isn't used more.
I think we're heading that direction.
Yeah, especially
why it's not used more? Agents, players union.
Yep.
I mean, not to be totally cynical, but that's why.
Yep. And it's going to get more and more with the back half of the order. Some teams, especially teams like the Rays, teams that aren't big market teams and able to fill the whole of their rotating staff, they're going to put some back half of the rotation type guys in there, and they're going to need the support of the opener. And it makes perfect sense. It's not a bad
like the Yankees this year.
Oh, yeah, especially here early in the season.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, especially when they have to jettison the carcass of Marcus Stroman at some point.
Yeah, but you need a couple guys, and I think what you're going to see, and this is a prediction, and we can see whether it comes true. I think there's going to be a roster change in terms of the amount of pitchers that you can keep on your staff, because I think they're going to allow them one more reliever, or one more.
Really?
I think so. I think it's going there.
Well, yeah, I could see it. Especially if the opener continues to proliferate in terms of usage. I could see that happening, because you're going to need it when you mandate a guy starting the game with 1 inning. What if your next guy gets blown up?
You've watched the game over the last 5 years and how teams' bullpens just get run into the ground in the course of a year. When
you go through those 18 games in 18 days stretches, I mean, it gets pretty ugly sometimes. That's when you got guys hanging a 9-run 4 inning outing out there because, hey, you got to get to the 5th at least, man.
All right, Alec Bohm is on this list, and he's a guy who we always have trouble valuing here in the preseason and in the draft season. He's usually undervalued, but we have a hard time getting an idea. He hasn't been what we had hoped he would be, but he's still not bad. He's pretty good.
He's not bad at all. He's very good. The problem, I think, is if we go back to the Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine commercials from the 90s.
Yeah.
Chicks dig the long ball. We have a tendency to strictly look at the categories that we use for roto style baseball. So you look at batting average, but then you look at runs, RBIs, homers, and steals, and that's it. So if a guy hits 50 doubles, well, whoop did he do? I don't care. That's a good hitter, okay? And a lot of times you'll get guys where the launch angle will just adjust itself the next year by a couple degrees. And instead of 50 doubles and 15 homers, you've got 35 doubles and 25 homers. And suddenly everybody thinks that player is vastly different. He is not.
Yep.
And Alec Bohm is a contact hitter extraordinaire. 90.5 mile an hour average exit velocity, but only 110.8 max. So for me, he's an average to average plus raw power guy, but it plays up in terms of game power. You don't see the home run power, but doubles are power. That counts. These are balls that are stung to the wall. Yep. He just hits them on line drives instead of a ton of fly balls. Doesn't pull the ball a ton. But he's always a 20% line drive hitter, so you're always going to have a plus average. The fly ball and pull percentages have gone up over the last couple of years. I think you will, in the next couple of years, see a 25 home run year out of Alec Bohm. Mm-hmm. Just one of those random years where it's 10 fewer doubles, 10 more homers. I think he's a very good hitter. You don't get the speed. And without speed or homers, people look at a guy and say, well, what good is he in roto style? Well, yeah. I see the point, but he is a quintessential high floor guy that does have some ceiling with that good average exit velocity and a very sound lineup to hit in.
This is where you have to fight a bias, because when you're working at third base, you can't take 15 homers. You say, I can't have 15 homers out of my third base. That's where I've got to get some power. Not necessarily the case. Plus, by the way, batting average, he's driven in 97 runs in the last 2 years. He drives in runs like a power guy.
I mean, they have a great lineup. He always makes contact, and he makes a lot of hard contact. So he's a perfect RBI guy. He's actually, a right-handed Vinny Paquantino with less power.
Okay.
And I mean, one tick less power.
Yeah. But you almost have to think that's coming too. I hate to call for another gear at 27, but I wonder if there's a certain
Isn't that the time when the gear happened?
I wonder if there's a point, and it might be this year, where they're going to ask him to be a little bit different hitter. Again, role plays a big part of this.
They've already got a bunch of guys that Schwarber, Castellanos, Harper. I mean, they've got guys that only hit homers and walk and do nothing else. I think they're cool with Bohm and how he's hitting. And you know, this is a guy, swinging strike and chase rates have come down 2 and 3 years, well, 3 and 2 years respectively, consecutively. So he is still getting better as a hitter. And, you know, 25 homers, it'll probably happen once in his career, but he should be a consistently roughly 20 home run guy with a very good average and a ton of RBIs and a decent amount of runs. He's a good player. And third base is not that deep. Yeah, so I'm perfectly happy with him.
If you're looking at the 62 runs, that's kind of an anomaly. It was 74 and 79 the previous 2 seasons. I'm not sure what happened. I could see a regression back up to 70 plus on the
the guys behind him had bad years.
And he's a 280 hitter with 97 RBIs, or a 274 hitter with 97 RBIs. That's what you got out of him in the last couple of years. Yeah, it's a few less homers, but that's not bad. That's not bad at all.
It's not. And I think we have to resist the urge to just sort of assume batting average will happen. The league average was 243 last year. This guy is 30 to 40 points above it. That's a big gap. That's like if your average guy hits 15 homers and the guy hits 25. Like, why isn't this as valuable?
Because people like me have biases and don't shop batting average.
Chicks dig the long ball.
Chicks dig the long ball. That's exactly right.
All right. I like Bohm very much. And as a late 13th round pick on average, you've got to be kidding me. I would target him 2 to 3 rounds before that. He's a very valuable player.
Now, I was surprised to find out that Dylan Cruz is so relatively undervalued, because he's one of the hype guys this spring.
He is. And but I think he went from 159 professional plate appearances and in, 4 months was in the majors.
Yeah.
So he did struggle at the major league level, but you could see the talent. And, very good speed, average contact ability, minor league 90 plus average exit velocity with a max of 112.5. Raw power is there. It may take a year or two to fully kind of form. He's only 23, but I'd say he's going to give you a good year this year. Certainly with the relative weakness of outfield compared to 5-10 years ago. 11th round, I have him on many teams so far this year.
Yeah, because it's a good value. And we have to get out of, we know 2020, right? Everybody knows 2020 and a 2020 player and how valuable he is. I tend to lean towards 40 guys, almost in any combination. Stolen
15, 25?
Yep. 15, 25. 15, 25 is great. We tend to downplay. We tend to want the homers more than the stolen bases. But that's the thing with the increase in stolen bases. Your strategy has to be, you have to get them through the depth of the lineup. It's tough to give up even first base for Vinny with stolen bases, but you kind of have to, because that's the way the market is. But you can't do it in the outfield. You got to get 15 stolen bases in the outfield. You're putting yourself behind if you don't get depth in the stolen bases. It used to be get 2 or 3 stolen base guys and you're good. I don't think you can do that anymore.
I was just going to say, you can't just grab Corbin Carroll and Bryce Terang and call it a day.
Yeah.
You'll still finish almost last in steals. So yeah, I looked through a few of the teams that I've been drafting for on the NFBC that were finally in the 47th round or whatever of, and my team, there's teams forecast for 320 steals. Like, okay, this is different.
Yep. But it's kind of not secondary, but you weren't, that's the guy who wasn't going for steals. That's the way it built out, because
you just didn't get any 0 steal guys.
Yep.
Yeah, without question.
Used to be.
You got to be cognizant of that. And Cruz could be a 30 steal guy.
Back in the day, I used to be just saves and steals. That's all I wanted to do. Just build those 2 columns. Head to head, just give me saves and steals. That's all I want.
Those are my 2 most frequently punted categories.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's several ways to skin the cat, right?
Oh, no doubt about it.
All right, Nick Castellanos is a guy who's constantly undervalued, and he's just a good, solid producer.
I write handwritten notes because I'm a dinosaur here for all these guys. And what I wrote next to Castellanos after a bunch of stats is, don't love him.
Yeah.
I don't. He's 33 now, and skills have been deteriorating somewhat. You still have the borderline elite raw power, max exit velocity last year 113, line drive rate nearly 24%. But he's a free swinger, and he's just not getting to it in games as much anymore. The average exit velocity has actually dipped below the league median now.
Yep.
And I think that's why high chase rates, poor contact, below average speed. Like, I see what people see, that there is still talent here. But, we're getting out of the prime years now. And if you told me Nick Castellanos hit 240 with 20 homers and a 280 on base percentage in 2025, I'd be like, yeah, that's probably it.
He plays in Philly, which helps. And the numbers for the last couple of years look productive, and they are productive. But keep in mind, 626 at bats, 606 bats. Are you willing to bet on 600 at bats with Nick this year at his age?
Yeah, I mean, probably. He's a healthy guy.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to. But one of these years, he's either going to crater or he's going to get injured. And the rate stats are not good enough to support what some people think of him. Yeah. However, we have him rated in the 7th round in outfield. That is not where I would draft him by any stretch of the imagination. By ADP, he's in the 14th. So if you come around in round 12 or 13, and Nick Castellanos, a guy who could easily knock in 100 runs and hit 25 to 30 homers, is on the board, outfield gets pretty thin. So, yeah, I can absolutely see where we're coming from with this. I think a single-digit round for Castellanos, for me, is a little too pricey.
No.
But you get past round 10, and he's sitting there, I certainly wouldn't mind him as a 4th or 5th outfielder.
Wait for that age discount, because it's out there. People have bias against older players. And again, the fact that I'm a little leery because I don't expect him to get 600 at bats. Not that there's any reason from his history to indicate he can't. It's just that what are the odds at this point that he's going to put 3 600 at bat seasons together?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. 23 homers, 6 RBIs, but it was 80-80 on runs and 23 homers, 6 stolen bases, but it was 80-80 on runs and RBIs, and it was 106 and 79 the year before. Again, very high at bat rates, but you get the right price for him, and he fits. And you're going to get it. If you wait long enough, you're going to get an age discount on him.
I think so. And like you say, good lineup, as long as he can remain a healthy player, which he's given us no reason to think that he won't. The counting stats will be there, and that's valuable. And the raw power is still very much in evidence. So,
and Philly is a good place for him to be.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It's a bandbox.
All right, Lane Thomas, who kind of fell off the radar. Lane Thomas was useful a couple of years ago. I liked him a lot. I just kind of lost track of him. Is he back? And he's moved to Cleveland this year, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is Cleveland runs a lot. Washington doesn't care. Like they were in non-compete mode. So yeah, you go out there, run 50 times. I don't care if you get caught 15, it's fine. Cleveland's a little more discerning because they're actually in the hunt. He ran a lot less when he went to the Guardians. Still has very good speed. So, a 2020 guy, sure, he could easily be that. I think the power also mutes itself a little bit at the Jake with much worse weather. Gets kind of crummy there sometimes right off Lake Erie. But his line drive rate is up 3 years in a row. So I think the batting average is likely to continue to improve. Solid average power, very good speed, very good plate discipline. Contact rate is good. Yeah. There are a lot of underlying things here that make me think that Lane Thomas could be a lot of different things for you this year. But I think whatever thing it is, it will be good.
I'm just looking. I'm just trying to find the dip last year. In 2024, that was in 2024, and it was I'm looking for luck stats. I'm looking for BABIP. I'm looking for home run to fly ball rate because his plate discipline is pretty good. Quality of contact is pretty good, but the results were somewhat different last year.
They were, and it's just one of those things. I mean, the BABIP dropped from 325 to 298, but 298 league average is 299.
Yeah.
So that's really not that bad.
And that's kind of regression because 325 was the anomaly, not the 298.
It is, 23% chase rate, 9% swing strike rate. He's a very good hitter. The exit velocity it's just kind of, I'd call him average plus in terms of power, but what it really was last year was the ground ball rate came down a ton.
Yeah.
So I think he was stretching for a little power because he hit 28 home runs sort of out of nowhere in 2023. And I think he was looking for a little more power and it wasn't coming, and maybe just trying to loft a little too much. I don't think he'll be doing that this year. 15 to 20 homers, 20 to 25 steals. I think the average will rebound because, again, good plate discipline, good contact ability, hits a lot of line drives. Generally speaking, you put those three things together and you've got a plus average, not a minus average.
All right, let's have some fun now. Jason Dominguez.
I'm irrational.
Strong guy, high level prospect for a number of years, but it's kind of fallen off the radar a little bit recently.
I'm irrational, completely irrational about him.
That's fair.
He's one of those guys that I feel like I've watched him a lot, both in the minors and the majors. And I feel like he coasts a lot, especially down in the minors.
Yep.
I think he has some talent that we've only seen glimpses of. He strikes me as the kind of guy that could come out of nowhere and go 30-30 with a 250 average this year. And people will be like, wow, I didn't think he was that good. I could see it. Now, he looks like a bumbling fool in the outfield. Raul Mondesi, like the worst of him. But, the build is similar to Mondesi as well. So he is a sizable human out there. If he weren't standing next to Aaron Judge half the time, you'd think he was immense. But next to Judge, he's like, oh, yeah, he's only like 6'4", 240.
All right, so what's going on in the minor leagues? Is it disinterest? Is it boredom? Is it?
I think he thought he should have been up.
Yeah.
And when you look at
pouting, basically.
When you look at the Alex Verdugo experience last year, yeah, I think Dominguez was sitting there like, kidding me with this?
Yeah.
So, he's only 22, and I appreciate the Yanks trying to like be patient with them. It's time. And there are big shoes to fill in the outfield.
Do they feel like it's time?
Oh, they very much feel like it's time.
Yeah. So playing time is going to be there this year.
Playing time is a lead pipe certainty.
Yeah.
He's in.
All right. So where's the range? 2020, 15-15?
Let's be conservative and say 2020. But I think I think more is possible.
Now, so you're basing this basically on scouting because you've watched a guy. Because numerically,
that can be a mistake. I know.
No, it's not. It's not necessarily a mistake because if we just take the numbers approach like we do at Fantistics, sometimes that overlooks things like a guy who's dissatisfied that he's not in the majors yet, or bored, or whatever the thing is for a 21-year-old kid or a 20-year-old kid in his position, a super hyped 20-year-old kid. It doesn't take those things into account. We look at numbers and we're not impressed. Well, maybe there are other factors involved.
Yeah. And, people have talked about him as, the second coming since he was like 15. So yeah. I think that can kind of feed into your psyche a little bit. He seems to be a pretty grounded kid as far as listening to teammates and listening to coaches and working on things, except on defense. He looks horrible, but I can't believe they're going to put him out in that left field, which is like 100-acre pasture. That may not go well, but I think you see these guys from time to time and you just hear the ball off the bat and you're like, oh, okay, that made a different sound.
Oh, Ellie De La Cruz for me in the minors.
Alfonso Soriano when he came up.
Soriano, another
one of these guys. The ball just jumps, and you're like, "Wow, okay." This guy's a major leaguer.
I saw Soriano at the Futures game at Fenway, and it was just like this. He's a different dude. He's Ellie De La Cruz, another example, just a different dude. Bryce Harper, just a different dude. Yeah,
Bryce Harper, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you
have that feeling about Dominguez. You have that. Oh, there's a stud here.
Well, when you see on a field like the Futures game, you see that is the next group of stars, and then you see a guy that's like here.
Yep.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Well, that's we talk about scouting. You and I go to minor league games. We watch minor league games a lot. You're looking for the alpha dog, right? You're looking pregame. You're looking at the batting cage. You're looking at the way the guy is in the dugout. You're looking for alpha dogs because that has to be part of the move to the majors. You have to be an alpha dog.
And that's why I still look at Ronnie Mauricio and his 2 years of injuries, and I'm like, he's going to be good. Yep. He can play, and he's got that swagger. And Dominguez has the same thing, where they know they shouldn't be there. They know they should be at the next level. So I know that we are stats people in general, and the stats do not capture what I think you can get out of this kid. He's got a lot more growth to come.
No, but it's okay. It doesn't, everything doesn't always fit, and it's not a formula and it's not an equation. We look at it and we have these discussions all the time. And again, because I know you've seen him and looked at him, I'll pay attention to that. And it's like sometimes stats don't tell you the whole story. And sometimes the same stats don't tell you the same story. It's not one equation for all these players. Everyone thinks analytics is just computers and running spreadsheets, and that's not what it is. You got to have some feel too.
You're right. You're right. Your eyes will lie to you more than the numbers will.
Yeah.
But I've been watching baseball for a long, long time, and I feel good about this kid.
Yeah, but there are certain guys that just jump out. Pujols in the New York Penn League. I remember seeing him just jumped out.
He was 18. And he looked like he was 25.
There was
like LeBron, for example.
In my house league.
He looked like he was 30 when he was 20.
In my house league, after I saw him in the New York Penn League, I would have drafted him first in that league. And I just sat there and wait and got him with the last overall pick. And it's like someone looked at me and goes, I get scared when you draft somebody I never heard of. And it's like, yeah.
You will.
You're going to get scared by this guy.
Yep.
And it's not, again, I think you don't have to be an expert. There are just certain guys that stand out. If you go see these games and you go see these guys compete on the same playing field, there are guys who stand out.
The thing that will jump out at you, and I don't know if you've actually seen much of him
All
yet.
Skeens, huh? In college?
Oh, ski. Well, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
The thing that will jump. Have you seen Dominguez a lot yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay. The thing that will jump out at you is how big a human he is and how he moves for being that big a human, much like Aaron Judge, except he's like a squatter, maybe a little wider version of Judge, and is still as athletic.
I see. I don't get that. I didn't get that impression at all. I thought of him as kind of lithe, actually. So this is all good stuff.
He's a big boy for 22. He's a big boy.
And this is why we like talking to boots on the ground. It's like we always talk to people, even subscribers and listeners and people who write us. And, you know, I'll reach out and ask somebody because I know they're watching a guy, right? Like I watch Red Sox prospects and you watch Yankees prospects. There are guys out there who are watching other stuff too and just get a better view of it.
Yeah, this says he's 5'9". I'm not buying.
No,
that's not what he looks. I mean, if he's 5'9", he's built like a fire hydrant. But I thought he was a lot taller than 5'9".
All right, so Patrick Bailey is a guy you wanted to get to too.
Yeah, I mean this is more of a hunch play than anything. But the underlying stats absolutely support him being my second catcher in like every single format this year. He's going in round 28 on average.
Yeah.
We only have him projected round 26 via FDP. So it's not that big a gap. But of all the catchers, when you get down there to in second catcher land where everybody's scraping the bottom of the barrel, for me, he's the one guy that stands out. The stat line last year was horrible in his first year of really everyday play, 120 games, 450 plate appearances. You know, 234, 298, 339, 8 homers, 4 steals. Nothing really exciting there. However, exit velocity went from 88.7 to 91.3 on average.
Yeah.
That is well above the major league average.
That stands out, doesn't it?
It's in a very good range. A 26% line drive rate, that should give you a BABIP somewhere in the 350 range probably. His was 287 last year, so below average. And he is not all that slow. He was a net positive base runner on Fangraphs last year, and he stole 4 bases as a catcher. His speed, I will say it's average to be conservative, but he might even be a slight tick above that. So for that BABIP to occur, strange.
Yeah.
Swing strike rate went from 11 down to barely over 10. Chase rate from 28.8 to 25.9. He'll throw in a few stolen bases. 42.5% hard hit rate. All these things are very, very strong underlying statistics that are going with a milquetoast stat line.
Okay, that line drive rate explains the barrel rate, which is at 5.5%, especially with that exit velocity. He wasn't getting ideal launch angles because he's hitting the ball in the nose all the time.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's terrible, right? I really like this kid. He's 25 too. So this is a year when you might get that power spike. The downside, not a great lineup in San Francisco in a horrible, awful, no good park to hit it.
Yeah.
But I like this kid as a second catcher.
And you'd like to, I would have built the model that there's going to be some, as he gets comfortable, there's going to be some lift in his game and the home runs will come a little bit, but I don't see any of that in the minor league history. So I'm a little skeptical of that at this point, especially in San Francisco, as you pointed out.
I think he can give you a 10-5 year, which as a second catcher it should be a plus average with his at least average contact ability, excellent line drive rate, and very good exit velocity. That should equate to a decent batting average. He's going to play every day. Well, as far as catching, whatever catchers equate to for every day, like 3 out of 4 or something like that. I think he's a very strong candidate for a second catcher, age 25, little bump to be expected. And if he just replicates his StatCast expected stats from last year, we've got a 258 batting average and a 398 slugging, which looks a heck of a lot better than what he put up.
Yeah, and that's something we haven't mentioned. We use expected stats a lot. I lean on expected stats a lot because it saves me the work. And in fact, those are the first levels that I start to look at. Did he get the results in the slugging categories that he should have based on his quality of contact? Did he get the batting average that he should have based on his quality of contact? I'll look a little deeper after that. But we all have our first level of stats that we look at, and I like to check the expected numbers against what he actually did.
Well, I think it gives you a good indicator of luck. Like we look at xFIP first for a pitcher to see, right, did he do what he should have done based on how he did? If that makes any sense at all. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
With Bailey, really, he hit the ball quite well, especially for a 24-year-old catcher in his first real starting role.
So prices will never be lower. Second catcher, got to go for it.
Yeah, around round 22, 23. I'm happy to take him as a second catcher. I bet I have him in 80% of my leagues.
All right, we're kind of up against the clock a little bit, and I know you didn't like the pitcher list here, but is there anything that you wanted to go over?
Oh, is there anything I want to go over? The 2 injury guys returning seem vastly undervalued to me: Shane McClanahan and Sandy Alcantara.
Why is McClanahan so undervalued? I don't understand it.
I don't understand. He was a clear burgeoning ace when he hurt his arm. We have ample amounts of data showing that recovery is 80 to 90% back to the same level anymore. Yes, this was his second one because he had one as a high schooler, but with almost 10 years in between, I'm inclined to not give him the Walker Buehler treatment of I'm really skeptical here. Sandy, I like even more. Like Sandy's already throwing 99 again, and he looks great. And he has come out and said, I have no innings limits that have been made aware to me. And people see, I think Sandy's the price. I understand why, because he missed a year to Tommy John, and the year before that he was very, very unfortunate and not quite as good. But what I've seen this spring, and I don't put a lot of stock in spring stats, except to say, does this guy look like he used to? Yeah, in Alcantara's case, he does. I would target him everywhere. And McClanahan, same deal. He's back 97, 98. Looks fine. I think he's going to be really good. And Tampa, if anybody knows how to handle pitching, it's Tampa.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the ceiling on this player, you take the chance on his return.
No doubt. The one guy I really do want to highlight off this pitching list, and I know we're up against it, Christopher Sanchez. I don't get the lack of love. Is it like a Logan Webb kind of thing where he doesn't have the gaudy K rates that everybody wants to see?
Yes.
The swing strike rate.
A little bias for that, yeah.
The swing strike rate's average, maybe a tick above. It's fine. Ground ball rate 60%. He's got a good offense supporting him, so a lot of wins would be expected because he doesn't walk anybody, so he's going to go deep into games.
Mm-hmm.
Like if this guy is your 4th or 5th starter and he's a 16th round via ADP, if he's your 4th or 5th starter, you're in great shape. I really like this kid.
Didn't strike out a ton of guys, but can strike out a guy when he needs to. That's the criteria on the 3 pillars. Can strike out a guy when he needs to get out of an inning. Doesn't walk anybody. Ballpark rates, home run per 9, 0.54 last year was just
in that park.
Unbelievable.
You kidding me?
Really?
He's a left-handed Logan Webb starter kit right there.
Yeah, and it's like you say, okay, well, what happened from the year before? Well, what happened from the year before was a 22% home run to fly ball. A home run to fly ball rate. What was the home run to fly ball? Yeah, 22% home run to fly ball rate as opposed to 9 last year. The truth is somewhere in the middle, but somewhere in the middle is acceptable.
Somewhere in the middle is very acceptable.
Yeah.
This is a very achievable rotation for people would be Logan Webb, Roki Sasaki, Christopher Sanchez, and Robbie Ray. You get your Ks with the other guys. You get your massive amount of innings with great control, great ratios, everything with Sanchez and Webb. That's a killer rotation. You don't have to reach at all. You could, in fact, wait on pitching and get that rotation. And that's just fine.
Well, I've got 2 Philly fans in my league that love starting pitching, so that's not going to happen. And
Well,
I got sniped on Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray was so much part of my plans this year.
He's looked brilliant this spring. I mean, for whatever that's worth.
That one hurt. And it was my cousin.
Well,
I sent him a text right after.
he's in the family.
That one hurt. He goes, yeah, I know you were looking at him.
Yeah, that's the problem with house leagues because everybody kind of knows what you're looking at.
Yep. All right, so check us out at insiderbaseball.com, especially if you're with us for the first time. Insiderbaseball.com is where you can get information on our in-season package to help you win your fantasy baseball championships, which includes the Draft Advisory Program, which is available for download now. Get it for your drafts. Go check it out. There's a free demo that I think you can check out as well. But you can find out a bunch of great articles on all the features of the Draft Advisory Program and listen to our podcasts here. There's the baseball blog, which is free to non-subscribers. All the preseason stuff is free, especially some of the methodology we use in the Draft Advisory Program, too, which I think you're going to find interesting, especially if you're new to analytics and metrics. I shouldn't use analytics because it's a dirty word.
It's what we are.
It's what we are. But we're baseball guys, too.
Well, you and I in particular.
Yeah. And we just learned we love the numbers, but we use a little bit of everything involved. And check us out where you're finding this podcast or at insiderbaseball.com. And we'll see you next time on the Inside of Baseball podcast. Thanks so much.